want to talk about a film that I would consider probably a little bit of the black sheep of the early 2000s. I mean, my God, it was an interesting film. It wasn't Pete's Dragon, it wasn't, Lord of the Rings, and it wasn't Game of Thrones. It was Matthew McConaughey with Christian Bale and the early Gerard Butler before he was anybody, and that was Reign of Fire, man. 2002. This film, dude, gets a very, very, very poor score. 6.2 IMDb, 42% on Rotten Tomatoes, 69% just watch. However, 77% of people like this film. Um, the story of a young boy named Quinn in present day London, and basically he watches his mother get killed by dragons that he accidentally awakens, and well, not intentionally himself, but basically through a mining operation unleashes a bunch of dragons upon the world, and they just start to devour it. It turns out that the dragons ate the dinosaurs, and they're like locusts basically, and they're just trying to survive in this post-apocalyptic world where dragons are, they reign supreme. And you have Matthew McConaughey in probably the most unlikely weirdest role he ever did since U-Boat 571. Well, strike that. There's some other weird movies he's
Yeah.
done.
This is a
But
weird one though.
but the look of him is so weird in here. Like every time I watch it, I'm like, oh dude, that's Matthew McConaughey, that bald guy, that bald buff guy there trying to be tough. That's Matthew McConaughey.
He
um,
was bald. Yeah, that's I
man,
remember. Yeah,
he's a big
he's a
tough guy.
big,
Bring him here to
yeah,
me.
big bald guy.
Bring him here to me, Quinn. And he's got the axe, and at the end, he gets devoured as he's jumping in the air by the dragon.
Yeah.
This was an interesting film for when it came out. I think it's a really interesting film, and I use interesting in a good way because while it is another post-apocalyptic movie with this leadership dynamic that does get really, really stale when you have two, strong characters, one that's already a leader, the other one that's a leader of something else comes in and basically pushes the other one out. It gets repetitive. It does. It's a repetitive story. However, though, the dragons were cool. The dragons were more like a locust type plague epidemic upon the earth rather than, like a intelligent, advice giving Sean Connery speaking dragon like dragon. These ones were more like, just straight up eat you and burn you alive. But what did you think of Reign of Fire, Steve?
Yeah, dude, looking back on it, I never really gave this movie like a bad review. I remember it coming out and people not liking it, and I was just like, why? There's so many other films that suck more than this one. I thought it was fine, dude. I mean, it was cool for its time. I just liked that, I think, because it had dragons.
Right. It's one of the
Maybe,
only
yeah,
films,
yeah.
that actually has like big name actors with dragons. And that's all you can really say. It's like with dragons.
How do
You
you
know.
like the dragons too, Rob? They are like smart beings that are like ancient. They're
No, they're
just like
like
you
more
said.
like
They're just out.
bats. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're more realistic, like just eat your ass kind of dragons. It doesn't even like matter.
yeah,
You know.
right.
They're
Just
just like,
kill
we'll
them.
just eat your ass, right? So, but overall, this is also before Gerard Butler was ever a thing. I mean, he's not even in the goddamn. You may see it now on these new titles, picture titles for the movies, but
Right.
realistically, cover art, I should say, for the movies. But he wasn't on the original ones. He wasn't even like cited. So this is like
No,
Gerard
they didn't even
Butler.
have anything. They just had
Yeah,
like dragons or something, I think. But they it was either Matthew McConaughey's face or it had dragons. It
no, it
was
was
not
just
Gerard
well, it
Butler.
said starring Matthew McConaughey, Christian Bale. That was it. There
Sounds like
was no
so
like
Gerard Butler.
side Gerard Butler. Gerard Butler wasn't even, the man he became, dude.
Dude, he had a little ways to go before he
He
was
still was
top
coming
of
up there.
300.
But overall though, Rain of Fire, I have to say, I actually would give it exactly where it's at. Surprisingly, audience.
Really?
Yeah, I would get, but I wouldn't give it such a low score. I'd probably give it 6.9. It's not a film you have to see, but it's definitely if you're in the mood for something like different, maybe a little sci-fi-ish, post-apocalyptic, and you're in that dragon kind of mood, like just coming off the Game of Thrones binge, you might like this one. This one might be for you. It's
Yeah.
personally, I love this film. It's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. I think it's a fun film. I like the survival films like this, the dynamics between the fighting characters and the leadership. I personally don't mind it. I like this movie.
Yeah, yeah, it was fine.